At a time when misinformation about climate change and is louder than ever, these discussions are not just important, they are essential if we're serious about protecting our environment and our future. And I want to thank the Honourable Member, my constituency neighbour, for securing this debate and putting this in context to show that climate change is also about health and about national security. So I'd like to focus on something we too often overlook, the direct link between climate change and global health. So in veterinary science, Madam Deputy Speaker, we use the term One Health. And that's the idea that human, animal, environmental health are all completely interlinked and inseparable. And climate change, it doesn't just sort of warm the planet, it accelerates the spread of disease across all animals, humans and plant health. So we've got climate shocks, floods, droughts, extreme heat. They don't happen in isolation. They disrupt sanitation, they displace populations, and they overwhelm what are often very fragile health systems. That is exactly the environment in which infectious diseases thrive, and we're already seeing this. As the climate shifts, we see vectors such as midges and mosquitoes moving into different parts of the world, carrying diseases into new regions. And diseases once considered topical are now being diseases once that were considered to be classified as tropical diseases are now being seen in other parts of the world as a direct result of this. And certainly in the UK, we now have a disease of livestock called blue tongue disease spread by midges that did not used to be in Northern Europe. We know the poorest countries are hardest hit by climate change, despite contributing the least to it. And we've seen that very recently in the Caribbean with record-breaking storm seasons. But this is not just a distant humanitarian issue. It's about our safety here in the UK. Because disease does not respect national borders. And a threat anywhere is a threat here as well. So when health systems abroad are overwhelmed, outbreaks spread faster, surveillance systems weaken, and the risk of global transmission rises. And that is how local crises become global crises. And layered on top of all of that is one of the greatest threats we face in global public health, and that is antimicrobial resistance. So antimicrobial resistance is a slow pandemic that is already underway. It gets relatively little media attention, but it's having a huge and direct effect on day-to-day medicine in the UK. It means antibiotics stop working, routine operations such as hip replacements become high-risk procedures, and minor infections become life-threatening. We're talking about returning to a world where a simple cut could kill. And by 2050, it's predicted 39 million people will have died as a direct result of antimicrobial resistance. Now, when you add climate change into that picture, this is driving infection, is increasing antibiotic use, and accelerating resistance. You create a perfect storm. Madam Deputy Speaker, when we're in a world, especially a Western world, with falling vaccine uptake, climate change denial, and growing global instability, it is often the scientists who are doing the hard work to keep us safe, and yet too often their warnings are ignored, and that has real-life consequences. When we cut overseas development assistance, when we scale back support for global health systems, for example the Fleming Fund, we're not actually saving money, we're increasing risk, and we're increasing risk to ourselves directly. Because that funding helps build up resilient health systems, it supports disease surveillance, and it reduces the spread of infection before it reaches our shores, before it reaches our NHS. Because prevention isn't soft policy, it's hard economics. And if we wait for a crisis, then we've already failed. Because by the time a new pandemic or an antimicrobial resistant superbug arrives here, the cost won't only be measured in budgets, but it'll be measured in lives. So this House faces a simple question. Do we act early on climate, on global health and on prevention, or do we wait and pay the financial and economic price later? Because a world without effective antibiotics is not an abstract future, it is becoming a very real possibility, and it's one that we shouldn't be willing to accept.